So I'd like to start by thanking the Des Moines Register for inviting me here today. And if you know who I am, it's probably because of the impeachment ads that I've been running for the last 8 months. And let me... We have over 5.5 million people who've signed our petition. But as part of that effort and that movement, I've been going around the United States, and we've done 30 town halls in Democratic states and Republican states and purple states. And it is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done to listen to Americans explain how they feel about the administration, how they feel about the president, and how they feel about their country. So it is a great treat today to be here with you. And let me start by saying that what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes. I have 20 minutes up here. And then I'd love to answer any questions that you have. I'd love to have a conversation with the people here. So let me explain for a quick second how we think about impeachment. But there are two things I'm going to talk about today, which have illuminated all the political things that I've done. The first is patriotism, and the second is returning power to the people. So when I think about impeaching the president, I think we have a reckless, dangerous, and lawless president, and every American patriot has a duty to speak out if he or she believes that, and a duty to stand up for our country. It's a question of patriotism, not partisanship. The history of impeachment, the only way that this could conceivably work is if the American people decide it has to happen. And that's actually what we're trying to do. We're going directly to Americans and asking them to raise their voices together through an impeachment campaign so that we can be heard in Washington by the elected officials. We're not going to try and solicit Congress people or senators. We're trying to get the American people's voice together to be heard. And if you think about everything that I've done politically over the last 6 years, it is all about the grassroots. We are running in this year the largest youth voter mobilization campaign in American history. Young people which for me is young, not for everybody, but under 35, is the largest age cohort in America, and they vote at half the rate of other American citizens. Half. And so what we're trying to do is engage them on the issues to get them to understand how important their voice is and how important their vote is so that they'll participate at a much higher rate the way other American citizens do. So what does that look like? In Iowa, in 2018, it means that we're on 29 campuses in the state of Iowa. 10 of those are community colleges. And what we've been here doing this organizing on the ground since the beginning of 2014. This is the 6th year of our being in Iowa, encouraging a broader democracy and a more inclusive democracy, because we believe that that is actually the solution to our problems, is more democracy, more participation, more inclusion. And if you look at the other things that we've done, they're all about grassroots. I have supported 11 immigrant rights groups to provide legal protections and legal representations for people under the threat of deportation, because we want to have a society governed by law where people's rights are respected. We're supporting 2 clean energy propositions this year. We already won one in Michigan, basically going directly to the people and asking them, cast your vote. Do you believe in clean energy that will make us richer and healthier? Or do you want to go along with old-fashioned fossil fuels? We all know what state has the highest percentage of clean energy in the United States. It's Iowa, because of all the wind energy that this state has chosen to produce. It's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's better. But the other thing that's going on in the United States today is that the people of the United States, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or independents feel as if they've been ignored, they've been overlooked, and they've been disrespected by the political elite in Washington, D.C. And Americans are not stupid. Actually, what they believe to be true is true. What you believe to be true is true. And I'll give you just one statistic to back it up. Since 1980, the average wage in the United States has gone up. But its buying power has been more than chewed up by the rise in healthcare costs, the rise in education costs, and the other costs of living in our country. So that means for 40 years, working Americans have not had a raise. That is an incredible fact, and it reflects something very simple. We have seen a hostile corporate takeover of our politics, and we've seen a hostile corporate takeover of our economy, where basically corporations have used their money to control the rules, and they have gotten 100% of the gain in the growth in our society for the last 40 years. I actually went back and looked in 1980. If I invested $1 in the stock market in 1980, I'd have 20 bucks today, 20 to 1. And over that time, working people's real gain in income is zero. That is what has happened in our society. That's why Americans are angry. And what we are lacking in the United States today, the absolute elephant in the room, is we don't have a positive vision for the 21st century for American success of how we're going to grow and prosper together. And that has resulted, listen, I was walking around 2 months ago. I've been doing these town halls. And I did a town hall a couple months ago in Des Moines, and I also did a town hall in Cedar Rapids. And while I was here, I got a chance to talk to, of course, a bunch of Iowans when we weren't doing the town halls. And I asked a very, very smart guy who's about 65, what's the biggest issue in Iowa? And he said, mental health. And I was like, mental health, is that code for opioids or PTSD for vets coming back or shutting down mental health facilities? But actually what I think it's code for is the people of Iowa feeling as if they've been disrespected, overlooked, and abandoned by our political system and our democracy. And so what I believe we have to do is get that vision together of what the rights are of an American citizen that cannot be taken away by well-heeled, well-organized corporate interests. And what does that look like? It looks like health care for everybody. If we're going to have a United States, everybody needs health care. We can figure out the best way. I have opinions about the best way to do it, but everybody has to have it. We have to have free, good public education from pre-K through college. If we're going to ask our kids to compete in this world, we have to support them, invest in them, and enable that to happen. And if our kids don't succeed, how is it possible that we will succeed? How is it possible that this country will succeed if Americans don't succeed? That is crazy. The third thing is, no one has a right to poison us. We have a right to clean air and clean water. And we are not compromising. You can make us somewhat sick or make us die a little early. No, we have a right to that. And the other thing we have a right to is the right to organize. There has been a 40-year campaign to take away the rights of working people in the United States. It's not a fluke that up until 1980, the benefits of America were split. 50% of it went to working people, so there were real consistent wage gains. What's happened is there's been 40 years of going after the rights of working people, not just right to work states, which I know you guys are familiar with, but also like the idea that if you are going to work for me, you can't sue me in court. You have to give up your right as an American citizen to use our legal system. This has been going on for 40 years, and the result is no wage gains for working people over that whole time, which is first time in American history. And the last thing is we have to retake our democracy. There is something going on here where the people running our country have taken over through a bunch of money, through court rulings. They are now controlling the democracy. They stand in the way of progress. Everywhere you look where you think there should be a gain, there's a well-organized, well-financed corporate interest standing in the way. And whether that's the pharmaceutical industry, listen, in 2008, we had this huge mortgage meltdown. Those people paid $234 billion of fines for malfeasance, and no one went to jail. Is that possible? One of those numbers is wrong. Either they didn't do $234 billion worth of damage, or one person should have gone to jail. That's where we are. We have to retake our democracy, and we have to retake the rights and dignity of American citizens against, it's supposed to be a democracy of people, not a democracy of dollars. And that's where we are. And having said that, I was looking at Missy in the front row. I've used up 10 of our 20 minutes, so I am ready to answer any question that you can come up with. So if you raise your hand, sir. On the borders. So the first two questions, am I going to run in 2020? Second, where am I on the borders? In terms of 2020, we're running what I think with our partners is the largest grassroots organization in the United States, and we are totally focused on November 6, 2018. We are also trying to use our 5.5 million person list to encourage those people to vote in November. And we went and checked, and traditionally, our list of people who do care about politics, only 1/3 of them vote in non-presidential years. So if we can actually double the participation of people under 35 and get our list to show up, which we believe we can have a huge victory on November 6, 2018, but nobody knows what's going to happen. So until we know what's going to happen, I promise the day after Election Day, I will be working full-time for justice in America. But I don't know the right way. And if you told me a year ago that what I'd be doing is running an impeachment campaign against the president, I would have said, no, that is very unlikely. So I promise that I'll be working full-time, but I want to see what happens on Election Day to see where we are, because it could be a lot of different things. And in terms of the borders, let me talk about that for a second. We don't have an immigration policy. We have been unable to come up with an immigration policy to deal with the 11 million people who have been here for years. In addition, we have a government which chose to separate children from their parents and put them in internment camps this year. So when I think about our immigration, our borders, the first question I have is, where is the justice in this system? We need to have a just system that treats the 11 million people here as fully human and gives them a path to citizenship. And when we have that, then we have to formulate an actual immigration policy, which we don't have. First, we need to deal fairly with the 11 million people and give them a chance. And let me say this. My wife and I went down to McAllen, Texas, to see what it looked like to have a country that was torturing children. And we actually saw something terrific that says something fantastic about the United States of America. And that's this. There was something very unjust going on. We went down to visit with the people who were running Catholic Relief Services in McAllen, Texas. And what we saw was an outpouring of compassion and bravery and generosity from the American people. And that's actually what I've seen in our town halls, and that's what I see honestly coming to the Iowa State Fair. Americans are brave and compassionate and decent, and we should be optimistic, because that's what we have traditionally done when faced with real problems, is risen to the occasion together. And that is what I hope and believe is happening this year, is Americans seeing a huge problem and coming together to do the right thing, hopefully with a shared vision of how we're going to prosper. And that is actually what I loved about the border. I went to see injustice, and what I saw was the spirit of America in the best possible way, the most American way of dealing with things. Sir.
Hi there. Would you support repealing the GOP tax plan that gives the most of the benefits to billionaires, and large corporations?
So the question was, would I support repealing the GOP tax plan? Absolutely. And I'll tell you why. The GOP tax plan, at least 90% of it, way more than 90% of it, is just going to rich people and corporations. And you say, the 10% is not nothing. The 10% is real money for working Americans. But this tax plan was always a 1-2 punch. First, they pass the tax plan, then they explain, we don't have money for anything that has to do with you. So they're going to use this tax plan to explain why we can't have health care for everybody. All the things I said we should have, they're going to use this to cut. Every single program in our budget that ends with an American is going to get cut. So that means education and training and retirement and health care. This is their excuse. We get 10% of the benefit, but we will pay 100% of the cost of that tax plan. And if you go through the budget, look, I was in the private sector. I love looking at numbers. I'm truly boring. But if you go through that budget, which I did, every single program that ends with a person is cut, and every single program that ends with a man holding a gun is up 30%. That's the military, it's ICE, it's the police, it's the prison system. And that is not how America is going to prosper. America is going to prosper because Americans succeed because we invest in each other, we enable each other, we include each other, and then we kick ass in the 21st century. Sir. Okay, can I answer the question? Okay, let me repeat it first. The question was, what are the high crimes and misdemeanors, which is the phrase in the Constitution which you have to meet in order to impeach a president? So let me start by saying, the way we answered this was we went to 58 constitutional scholars back in December, and I'm going to go through them, but I just want to go through the process first. And they came up with 8 impeachable offenses, and we actually taped them and put them on our website. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to go through it, and it's a lay down hand. We then updated it at the end of June, and they came up with a 9th. So let me give you the most obvious ones, and then I want to talk about the question that was posed about, doesn't every president meet this, or don't a lot of presidents meet this? The most obvious one is corruption. In the Constitution, it says the president cannot accept any payment whatsoever from a foreign government or our government. And this president, because he's refused to give up his business interests, accepts payment from foreign governments through his hotels every single day. And those governments know exactly what they're doing. His resort interest received a $500 million loan from a state-owned bank in China. That is definitely a payment whatsoever from a foreign government. He's also obstructed justice in plain sight, including firing the head of the FBI for investigating him. And if you go to our website, we really did get constitutional scholars to deal with it. But let me say this. Impeachment we take really seriously. It's about lawlessness, not about policy. We are not trying to impeach this president because we disagree with his tax policy. We are trying to impeach this president because we're trying to stand up for the Constitution, we're trying to stand up for our democracy, and we're trying to do what's right and tell the truth. That is the only reason we're doing it, and we believe that the reason American politics has fallen into this hole is that Americans have stopped telling the hard truths because they assume that the American people aren't strong enough and tough enough. And we don't believe that for a second. We believe the answer is the American people, and that's why we are talking about patriotism and returning power to the American people every day. Thank you so much. It's such a gas to be here.